All right. Well, welcome again to our webinar series with Community Navigators. And good morning, and thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service. My name is Danielle Tehema. I am the Education and Business Development Director for IANTA. And we're excited to have you here today. Before we jump in, all questions, please place them in the chat or use the Q&A function, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation, time permitting. This panel specifically today will present various tools and frameworks that are beneficial for recreation and tourism planning on public lands and forests. And we're excited to welcome our guest speakers in just a moment. For more than 25 years, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, or IANTA, has served as the only national organization dedicated to advancing cultural heritage tourism in Native nations and communities across the United States. Established by tribes for tribes to address inequities in the tourism system, IANTA is a 501c3 national nonprofit governed by an all-Native board of directors and serves as a united voice for the $15.7 billion Native hospitality sector. IANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values while helping these businesses become market and export ready for domestic and international markets. Tribes who are looking to start or expand their cultural tourism footprint can find resources on ianta.org, and visitors interested in learning more about Native culture can visit nativeamerica.travel. Before we introduce our speakers today, just a reminder, please join us at the 27th Annual American Indigenous Tourism Conference. This year will be hosted by the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians at the beautiful Pearl River Resort in Choctaw, Mississippi on October 27th through the 30th. So join us as we celebrate resilience, creativity, and collaboration in the ever-evolving world of Indigenous tourism. You can learn more at ianta.org/AITC. And now for what we've all been waiting for, our speakers today. So our first presenter, Gian Nuapani, Dr. Gian Nuapani. Dr. Nuapani is a professor and director of the Center for Sustainable Tourism at ASU, Arizona State University. Dr. Nuapani's research focuses on public lands, sustainable tourism, parks and protected areas, community resilience, and ingenuity. His research has been instrumental in planning for federal, state, and tribal parks. Next, Dr. Nick Wise is an assistant professor of tourism development and management in the School of Community Resources and Development at ASU. Dr. Wise teaches tourism planning and is trained as a geographer. His research focuses on placemaking, competitiveness, and community development, and offers practical implications for destination planners. Before I pass it to our speakers, just a reminder of using the chat function and the Q&A. And one additional bit of information, which I'm going to pass to Dr. Nuapani in a moment. We do have a certificate program with ASU coming up. So please visit our website or scan the QR code for additional training opportunities. But this is a partnership-based certificate program with Arizona State University. And again, you can visit our website for more information, as well as our newsletters and the Rupert Report to keep up with all things Indigenous tourism. Dr. Nuapani, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Danielle. Good morning, everyone. This is Gian Nuapani. Thank you for the introduction, Danielle. This certificate, we offer to Native nations to manage their tourism. This is in collaboration with IANTA, as Danielle mentioned. The purpose of this certificate is basically to provide an overview of sustainable tourism, how it can be incorporated into communities, tourism planning and development. We have already offered this course twice, and this is the third time we are offering in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. So the program runs about 7.5 weeks. So the registration deadline is next Monday, October 6th. Please do register if you are interested in doing this certificate. We have 7 modules, including introductory module, which that's how it makes 7.5 weeks. So each module will require 5 to 6 hours of effort from participant side, and then we put out 2 hours of class content in variety of formats, including lecture notes, videos, reading materials. So it's a self-guided reading assignments. So it's asynchronous. So it means you don't have to be alive on certain times. You can actually go on your own pace, review these videos and lecture notes, and do your assignment, and then it's a pass fail. There's no A, B, C, D grade, right? Um, so I'm gonna just give brief overview of the course content. So this is a very intensive course we're trying to do in 7.5 weeks. It includes very basics of sustainable tourism, what it means, what is the definition of sustainable tourism, how it's evolving, and there are various components of sustainable tourism, including biodiversity, making more inclusive and responsible, justice and equity, and all sorts of aspects in sustainable tourism, and marketing and social media, which is, as very important aspect. We also talk about destination planning, development, and management in two different modules, and lastly we cover strategic plan. So this is a quick overview. If you are interested in doing this course, please sign up, and we are so excited to offer this again. Thank you. And then this course is taught by 7 different professors from ASU Sustainable Tourism Center, and these professors have expertise in different areas. My area is more planning, but there are some professors who have expertise in marketing. Some of them are expertise in more biodiversity aspects. So you will be hearing from different expertise on sustainable tourism. Thank you.
All right. So, good morning, everyone, and thanks, Danielle, for the introduction to our program here. The way I always like to start with talking about tourism planning is to think about planning and development in terms of how we outline that for growth, legacy, and then also for future sustainability. And I like to present this in kind of 4 blocks here. So we have to really frame, where are we now? Where do we want to be in the future? How are we going to get there? And then also thinking, are we there yet? So I always say, what is planning? And I walk my students through all of these steps. And this is usually something I open up my tourism planning class with. And also within these, we want to start building capacity during each step of the way. So when we think about where we're now, where are we now? We have to think about our endowed and created resources that we have, and identifying them and how we can evaluate them in terms of how they are useful as a tourism resource. And then also doing research and analysis into what the current market demands are. Visitors are going to travel for different purposes. So we have to position what resources we have in terms of what the current demands are. Then from what our resources are in terms of what tourism products we have to offer here, then we have to create some visions, some aims, and some objectives to start to put into motion, being creative in terms of what we have to offer, but that vision also puts in motion in terms of how we're going to actually promote and how we're going to actually think about our products there as well. Once we have a vision, then we start moving more into the strategy, and we start organizing, and we start also thinking about more collaborations and partnerships that we want to work with when it comes to actually starting to deliver these products, which then leads to the implementation. Implementation is when we start seeing people come in to use these products, make use of the tourism resources, and also interact with the locals in these living environments, in these public lands, wherever people may be visiting, in terms of what tourism products are there to offer. But within the implementation, it's really important that we think about, the local human resources, who's involved, who's taking part of this, financing these products as well, and also the marketing promotion side. And then how are we going to get there? Are we there yet? When you start having a sustainable tourism destination, you start actually delivering a product and people are engaging in these products. It also involves that constant monitoring and evaluation to keep up with the consumer demand, and also keep up with the trends in terms of what people want, and also keeping up in terms of the sustainable community livelihoods as well, in terms of how this is benefiting, impacting the community, because we always have to think about, are we there yet? It's not just thinking about, are we there yet in terms of tourism numbers, but are we there yet in terms of achieving sustainable community development alongside our tourism products? Just thinking about that balance between the host community and the visitors that we have there as well. And then when we start to position this, different frameworks that we think about. So I like to frame tourism planning around these three frameworks of limits of acceptable change, visitor experience resource protection, sustainable livelihoods approach, and then we can base that on community-based tourism initiatives, and then also adaptive co-management there. They're slightly different. But if we start to think about, if we're putting some proposals together to think about how we want to develop a tourism plan, thinking about limits of acceptable change, visitor experience, resource protection, sustainable livelihood. So the limits of acceptable change approach there, we have to consider, what is acceptable levels of tourism impact for our community? And, a lot of places might move towards more mass tourism, but we also have to think about what's acceptable, what's our carrying capacity in terms of the destinations that we're trying to develop and we're trying to build our tourism products here as well. And within these acceptable change, we have to consider, the local lived experiences there as well, because the visitor use is going to be managed and agreed within the limits of what the community wants to see, to try to limit that ecological and cultural harm, because we want to focus on acceptable change as preventing that overuse. When we think about the visitor experience and resource protection, that's where we're trying to find more of that balance between the visitor experience and how we're protecting our cultural and natural resources there as well. And this is where the residents and the community play a key role when it comes to defining the desired visitor experiences, because the community are also stewards of the sensitive areas, cultural sensitivities, of natural ecological sensitivities that are unique to any given area that you're in. So the programs that are developed, when we think about this visitor experience resource protection, the programs are co-led by the community members. And we have to think about some of the outcomes as improved visitor satisfaction, how we reduce overcrowding, overuse, and enhance our protection of our products that our visitors are engaging with, consuming, and interacting with. The sustainable livelihoods approach, that's more moving towards this co-creation, and that's where tourism development has to be linked closely with the local communities and that local community household well-being. And that's where you focus on the local population to identify those priorities, and then within the local resource use, there's a chance to see how people can get involved in terms of local entrepreneurial opportunities and also helping to co-develop these products here as well. When we think about local entrepreneurship in terms of tourism, that's where we're also helping with capacity building, we're supporting new skills, also training people. And within this, more community engagement helps with community resilience and increasing the quality of life through direct engagement in tourism activity. It also helps diversify the income streams, and it also creates stronger household assets in terms of being engaged and being part of the tourism product there as well. Also, at the same time, we have to think about how this helps maintain the cultural practices and that natural stewardship of the natural lands there as well. There's different methods in terms of engaging with these different types of frameworks. So when we think about the limits of acceptable change, a lot of times it's stakeholder workshops to help set up thresholds for visitor experience and resource protection. It's about working with stakeholders to set desired conditions for use. And then the sustainable livelihood approach is working directly with individuals within the community, household surveys, household interviews, and then community needs awareness in terms of what is needed to get people to start local businesses, local enterprises that help support the tourism supply in the local area. So when we think about setting up these different frameworks here, these can then be based on community-based tourism. Community-based tourism is one that helps leads to empowerment, within the local community, and the community again is also co-designing these tourism products to benefit members along with their cultural priorities and their ecological priorities in terms of resource protection within their local living environments there. Community-based tourism is also smaller scale and lower impact tourism, and what it is aiming to achieve is also a stronger sense of place amongst the community. So it's important to embed aspects of storytelling within this, and from a standpoint of measuring this is also focusing on more participatory methods, community mapping, storytelling, and consensus building within the community. Then we have more of an adaptive co-management approach, where this is where we're trying to build a more iterative shared governance for communities, public lands, to build these tourism products here. And the collaborative approach is more with, say, tribal councils, with public agencies, NGOs, residents also play an important role in the decision making. So there's a lot more collaboration amongst different stakeholder groups here, and they form more joint planning committees to agree on ongoing collaboration. So there has to be measured through more continuous dialogue, monitoring, and also these feedbacks with the different stakeholders, so that you're building sustainable products over the longer term here. So the last part of that was moving towards the integration of tribal values and indigenous values here, and it's really about how we think about balancing tourism with that land stewardship and knowing the land, the cultural significance of the land, the ecological significance of the land, because we have to think about how we're going to balance with the visitors on, say, fragile ecosystems, and also lands are protected as well. So it's ensuring that visitors are also educated and aware of the significance of lands from a cultural standpoint and also ecological standpoint. And that's where clear thresholds really need to be set, so that we have an understanding of what the acceptable impacts are going to be. And it's also measuring the impacts not just from the financial and the economic side of things, it's also understanding it from how the community is impacted, local business that's created from there, and how income generated through tourism also filters back down and supports the local communities instead of being leaked out of our local communities. We also have to think about the where voice is set within the stories, because I mean, storytelling is an important part of land stewardship, and also engaging visitors with the land, because a lot of time when people are traveling, they want to understand local experiences. We did a study in Navajo Nation a couple years ago with visitors. You know, visitors, one of the key things is wanting to understand the indigenous tribal values, and also understanding the voice, and how that ties in with some of the cultural elements and tourism products that are also being sold in the various destinations there as well. From a terms of long-term resilience, being adaptive, and that's kind of going back to those planning principles when we think about working through where are we now, where do we want to be, how are we going to get there, are we there yet? That's why I always look at that as a constant cycle there, because tourism is also being adaptive. There's going to be seasonality challenges, there's going to be different visitor demands, you're going to have different segments of populations visiting as well, and that's where being adaptive in terms of working with different visitor and audience space is going to be important, because being flexible helps adapt to those visitor interests and demands, and also challenges when we think about climate conditions and also cultural needs in terms of what visitors want to consume in places as well. So within that, strengthening those partnerships leads to that more shared governance as well. And shared governance is also about creating that accountability. So when we think about the integration of tribal values into tourism, we want the outcome to then be an advancement towards sustainable planning and also sustainable land use here as well. So the implications for sustainable planning at the end is demonstrating how that long-term stewardship is also a pathway to help advance these opportunities for our local populations. So we have to think about tourism in terms of evidencing the impacts that are going to last over the longer term as well, and not just focus on the immediate gains. Sometimes we have our sights set on immediate gains for tourism, but we have to think about the longer term impacts and the longer term consequences that tourism is going to have, because especially in fragile lands, fragile environments, we have to think about preservation methods and preservation efforts in terms of how we're going to utilize and maximize these resources over the much longer periods of time there as well. So within that long-term stewardship approach there, it's that continuous monitoring, that adapting when necessary, because this monitoring and adapting will help sustain the products and keeping up with how we want to preserve and protect, while at the same time maximizing opportunities to bring visitors to engage with our tourism products there. That balance of those ecological and cultural values is also important as well, because within the balance, it's not just focusing on one aspect of nature and culture. There's the nature culture balance, because together, that's where a lot of the important storytelling takes place. And protecting that biodiversity is important to also at the same time safeguard our cultures there. Preventing overuse and degradation. When we don't have any planning, no planning, and lends to more sporadic and chaotic tourism opportunities, which can actually lead to habitat loss and also cultural erosion, which from a long-term sustainability standpoint is not going to be beneficial to our local communities there. And we also have to think about how much is too much, because sometimes less is more when it comes to products, and focusing on very specific particular niche products can be more beneficial to local communities when you're doing something particularly well. And then those experiences are being told by the visitors, and people come back for a very particular experience there. And that's where we also help provide those more clear accountability measures there at the same time. So within the different frameworks, and the different frameworks that I noted there, I put at the very end of the slide, and there's a chance to I have it summarized in a table as well that details various points through those frameworks. And within those, that helps you want to take those frameworks and the ones that work best for your community and contextualize those. And then also, I also like to encourage connecting some of those different frameworks to community-based tourism or to adaptive co-management that lend to the Indigenous values there as well. So at the end, these all help ensure benefit sharing and equity when it comes to developing our products here, so that all of our communities benefit. Capacity is built through all stages of the planning process. We're encouraging entrepreneurship and local activities, which are all together. This local participation is key to the sustainable development. So some things that I would encourage you to think about is, what are the biggest challenges when it comes to cultural preservation and ecological conservation in your communities, and also thinking about what the challenges are in terms of planning and preserving these in the future. So that's my thoughts about how we think about outlining these frameworks in the proposals that we're going to develop when we're planning for tourism products.
All right, thank you, Nick. I think Nick's presentation was a good overview. So I'm going to focus on few components and the process. What are the tools we can use? I'm going to add a few more tools to the frameworks Nick mentioned, and I'll also provide you a few examples of the tourism planning work I've done throughout the last few years. So tourism planning components, Nick already talked about a few of them, but when you do your tourism plan, you need to consider a few things very carefully. One is the natural and cultural resources. These are the resources we utilize to promote tourism. These are the resources the visitors would use, but at the same time, you should be thinking about how do you balance your natural and cultural preservation versus utilization, right? So that should be an important part of your planning. So infrastructure and superstructure. Infrastructure is usually everything that we use and the visitors use. Could be roads and sewage and electricity. These are infrastructure, but we call superstructure for those who are exclusively used by tourists. For example, stadiums, resorts. So these are casinos. These are the ones we build only for tourists. Some of them are used by residents, but mainly for tourists. Market analysis is important for tourism planning. You need to understand your market, who are your visitors, how do you target them, and that's important part of your planning. And I think Nick talked about stakeholder engagement. This is very, very important because you don't want to miss anybody's voice. Who are stakeholders in tourism planning or your land use planning, and how do you engage them? That's very important part of planning process. Uh, Institutional framework. This is important part as well. Who is going to do what? What are the organizations responsible for promoting, managing, governing tourism and land management? So that's important part of planning. Time frame. The planning could be. You can have 1 year plan. 5 year plan, 10 years plan, 20 years plan. So there should be a time frame within your plan. How long this planning. The budget is important part, how long it's going to take to implement the plan. So the plan is not just utopian plan, but it's more doable plan, right? So how much revenue you have, what is doable. So that's important part of planning process as well. And at the end, you want to get public comments. You don't want to write a plan and then without getting public input, you don't want to implement it. So that's important part of plan as well. And monitoring and evaluation, you don't want to just plan and just sit there. You have to evaluate what worked, what didn't work, so that when you are doing your next plan, that's going to be helpful to do your plan. Some of the planning tools, Nick talked about some of the frameworks, but I'm going to introduce a few more here, including recreation opportunity spectrum, SWOT analysis, scenario planning, feasibility study. These are the tools I have used in my planning work. And also that some of the stakeholder, because engaging stakeholder is very important part. So there are different tools you can utilize to engage stakeholders when you do your planning. It could be having an advisory committee representing different stakeholder groups. Your advisory committee could help you to make your plan, to help you to prioritize. So it's very important part of this planning process. You can do focus groups with residents, focus group with visitors, focus group with businesses. You can organize town hall meetings to listen to the public. You can do surveys with tourists. These are more the quantitative kind of surveys to get what tourists want. What are their priorities. You can also do survey with residents and businesses as well. Interviews is important part. You can interview a few people to get their input. In terms of their priorities and what they like, what they don't like, and things like that. And then public input. So at the end, public input is important. There are ways you can get their input through these tools. I was just curious, how many of you have heard about recreation opportunity spectrum? Maybe you can use your chat box if you have any experience utilizing this framework, or you heard about this framework. I'm just curious. So this recreation opportunity spectrum tool is actually developed by the USDA Forest Service back in 1970s, late 70s, and it has been updated since then. But it's a important framework. For example, if you have a park and then within your park you get diverse group of people, you get somebody who is interested in experiencing more, primitive, more wilderness type of experience, just hiking by himself or herself. And there might be somebody who want to be just with other people in picnicking and camping and stuff like that. So there are a range of the diverse range of interest when you see people coming to your community, coming to visit your park. So this framework would help understand, people have diverse interest and how do you meet their interest, because sometimes these interests conflict, right? Some people who are interested in having more isolated type of activity would be bothered when they see a lot of people, when they see a crowd, right? So this tool helps to manage your park so that you're going to meet diverse needs. So in this framework, you can have, one spectrum could be primitive, more wilderness type of experience. Other end could be more urban type of experience. So urban type of experience, as you know, needs more development, more visitor management and things like that. Whereas primitive type of experience, there is not much management involved in managing. People do a lot of things by themselves. There is not much facility and there's not much management presence in that site. So you can have a range of activities within your park. And then these settings differ by different characteristics. For example, physical characteristics of urban park could be very accessible, whereas physical characteristics of primitive park could be very remote, right? So these characteristics would differ. Access, infrastructure, and remoteness and size of the park would differ in terms of these settings. Also, the management would be different because in urban park, probably there is a more involvement of management. There is more presence of management and rangers. Whereas in a primitive park, there is a less presence of management, right? Same thing with social characteristics as well. There are the opportunities of activities are more isolated, as I said before, in primitive areas, whereas in urban areas, the activities are more with other people, more social interactions, more people engaged in activities. So there's a social interaction is much higher in urban settings. In terms of challenge, if you look at urban settings, visitors are less challenged, right? Because there is access to water, there is access to a lot of things. They don't need to plan much. But when you look at the primitive setting or wilderness setting, these are more challenging. You have to have your food, you have to have your water, you have to have everything, emergency and everything by yourself, right? So this would help to manage, to plan your park, to plan your site. So I thought this tool would be useful for you to look at. If you go to Forest Service recreation opportunity spectrum, they have a detailed guidelines you can use, but this is just the overview of what ROS or recreation opportunity plan looks like. I did, few planning projects with different agencies. So I'm going to give you a few examples of these projects I did. A couple of years ago during COVID, I did this work with the Park Service, looking at the U.S.-Mexico border. There are a few protected areas, few national parks, national monument, forests, national forest, even state parks in that area, both on the U.S. side and the Mexico side as well. So we're looking at, how we can utilize the border parks to bring more tourists, manage the resources, in a sustainable way. So in this plan, we had extensive stakeholder engagement through interviews, focus groups, public input meetings. We also did situation analysis, reviewing documents. We also did SWOT analysis, I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. And also we developed different themes based on the input from all these research tools you utilize. We developed 3 themes. One is developing, the border region as a tourism destination. how do you provide quality experience to tourists, and then promoting sustainability and conservation in the Sky Island area. This is SWOT analysis. Probably many of you have used SWOT analysis, but this is very simple tool you can utilize. Any park, any community, you can look at, okay, what are the strengths within our community? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are the threats? So this simple exercise can help your plan, help manage your area better. We also use this sustainable tourism framework. Actually, we developed this framework for the Sky Island area, and then this framework includes basically three components. One is developing area as a destination, providing quality experience to visitors, and managing resources in a sustainable way. For each of these themes, we developed goals, we developed objectives under each goal. So a lot of times people are confused with what is difference between goal and objective. Goal is broad, objectives are more specific, objectives can be measurable. For example, if you say your goal is to bring more tourists to your community, more tourists to your park, that could be a goal. But if you're thinking about objective could be more specific. You're trying to bring more younger visitors, visitors visitors from different states or different regions. So that could be your objective, right? And then we also did to meet these objectives, what are the short-term actions, what are the medium-term actions, what are the long-term actions? So this help to make your plan more achievable down the road. So this is just example, but we have over 100 pages report. If you are interested, we can share those reports with you. We also did a project with the Bureau of Land Management a few years ago, Arizona Bureau of Land Management, BLM. So this plan is very different. This plan is not specific. This is more broad, more long-term visioning. So what we did was we actually developed different scenarios, and then these scenarios could help them better to manage and plan their land. So this is a more strategic thinking, planning, rather than just having more specific plan. So in this plan, we call it North Star 2025 because you are looking at the future, not just the present, what the future of land management look like and how they can utilize those more futuristic tools to manage the land. So in this scenario planning exercise, we developed 4 different scenarios and then define all these scenarios. Some of these scenarios could be not the scenarios you want, but there could be a scenario that could happen, right? We call them, some of the scenarios could be doomsday scenario. So it's not the one you want, but it might happen, right? Some of the scenarios could be utopian scenarios. So scenarios that will happen if everything goes perfect, right? So this is another tool you can utilize when you're thinking about long-term visioning for your community and park. We also did statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Every state, whichever state you are in, they have their score plan. So to get land and water conservation fund from the federal government, they have to have this 5 years plan. So every state, wherever you are, maybe you can find out a lot of these states, including Arizona state parks, they develop the plan. During this planning process, they get stakeholder engagement. They engage with other public land management agencies, even tribal parks and tribal agencies, and then prioritize for next 5 years. What are the priorities for next 5 years to serve the public? What do they need to invest their land and water conservation fund? So we actually help Arizona state parks 3 times, including the recent plan, to develop their score plan. In this plan, we again engage with stakeholders a lot. They get their input through surveys, through focus groups, through different sessions. and then develop the goals and objectives and develop strategies to implement these goals and objectives within next 5 years. And again, I think which each of these priority areas we go deeper in terms of funding. We go deeper into how collaboration would work. I think the new way of doing things, managing land, managing tourism is collaboration. Collaboration is the key. You can't do everything yourself. You have to have collaboration with different agencies, vertically, horizontally, so that you can utilize all the collaboration to meet your goals and objectives. Communication and education, sustainable infrastructure, accessibility. These are all important things to consider when you have these priority areas defined. This is important part. A lot of this framework Nick and I talked about are Western framework. A lot of these tools you use, we used in terms of stakeholder engagement are Western frameworks, and a lot of times these Western frameworks might not work for Indigenous communities. Actually, I work with Indigenous communities in the U.S., in other parts of the world as well. But I think sometimes it does not work. You can't use cookie cutter approach when you do stakeholder engagement with every community, because a lot of times Indigenous communities they don't like to fill out surveys. They are mostly storytelling, sharing their stories. I think this is more powerful than just filling out surveys. These are the tools you can utilize to get input from your community instead of just using the Western framework, town halls and things like that. So we utilize some of these tools as well, and which works much better with Indigenous communities. And also culture is very important component of land use management. Culture is important in terms of tourism. So I think a lot of times the Western tools are very natural resource focused, but I think Indigenous tourism planning could be more culturally focused. So how do you integrate cultural values into tourism planning and development is also important. Just a few examples. I lived in New Zealand for a few years, and Maori tourism is something that is working better than many other places. They develop their own tourism in terms of the ownership and control of business themselves, not just utilizing Maori culture and product for tourism, but also how the Indigenous people can control and manage their tourism themselves without external control. They are also utilizing some of their values into tourism. These are 10 Koru spiral Maori values, and I have seen some of these values have been implemented in tourism planning and tourism management. So for example, this relationship and kinship is in Indigenous relationship. You also have relationship with the land. You have relationship with the plants and animals, and how do you integrate that relationship within tourism planning? The stewardship and guardianship. These are important concept in Indigenous groups, and that could be implemented in tourism planning as well. This is Kaikoura, New Zealand, where Maori, they are utilizing their values in tourism plan. This is Whale Watch. They have their Whale Watch tourism company themselves, and then they have utilized all these cultural values into tourism promotion, tourism management, and things like that. We also did a project with the Navajo Nation recently to manage their Western area tribal parks. The plan is still in review. I can't share the entire plan, but I can share the process, what we did for this plan. Basically, we use two-stage approach. One is forming advisory group, and then getting input from advisory group first, and then going to communities and doing more cultural mapping process, asking them their priorities. What are the areas they want to protect? What are the areas or cultures they want to preserve? What are the areas they want to open for tourists? What are the areas that they can integrate with culture and tourism? So we're trying to do cultural mapping based on their input in this planning process. So with that, this is a very brief, I summarize 10-20 years of my planning experience in 10 minutes. But if you have any questions or comments, we'll be happy to engage for the next few minutes.
All right. Well, appreciate the presentation, both of you. We're going to stop sharing for just a moment. I did see a raised hand during the presentation, and I'd welcome anyone that has additional questions to go ahead and put those in the chat. We have not seen any come into the Q&A panel just yet, but I do have a question for both of you myself. Would you say those looking to develop plans to work, partnerships with academia would be a good first step, or how would someone go about beginning to undertake some of the representation that you presented here today?
I would, I would, I would say some of the collaboration with academia is to help with understanding tourism feasibility planning, and we do a lot of consultancy work with groups, and we offer the kind of that neutral approach to then also provide recommendations that are both critical and creative.
And also we utilize our resources, students, fresh, minds in the research process as well. So when we do plan, I think you can do your plan in different ways. You can hire a consultant to make your plan. Most of the time our help is through research, right? So we do deeper research in the planning process, so that could be helpful for your plan. But we do, as Nick said, we do a lot of those planning for different agencies, and you can reach out to us if you have any questions. If you go to actually Center for Sustainable Tourism website, I'm going to post the website. We post all our work on the website, so you can look at what are the plans we have done, what kind of work we have done. It's all public. So when we do any work, we want to invest enough time to prepare your plan and make sure the plan is the one that you want. Our work is always based on sustainability, community development, equity, and justice. These are some primary themes we want to utilize when we do these plans.
All right, thank you. And Matthew Thompson, I do see your hand raised again. I'm going to go ahead and have you unmute to ask your question. If you're there. All right. Well, we'll leave you there just in case. Any other questions from those that are in attendance? And I see Ben, yes, thank you. So Nevada's Indian Territory uses recreational opportunity spectrum to develop navigation.
Good to know. Would you be able to share your Explore Native Nevada? I would love to see how you utilize recreational opportunity spectrum.
And I don't want to mispronounce your name, Peli. Is that you've been given permission to ask your question? Please do so.
Yes, thank you, Nick and Dr. Jen. My question was around successful community-based models. What management options have been successful in the past from your experience?
this is a really good question, Pele. Community-based tourism is not easy thing to do. It's easy to say, but hard to implement, right? When you say community-based tourism, there are different spectrum within community-based tourism. One is tourism which is totally community controlled, community ownership, no private ownership of any business. Just community has control over everything. More shared profit, shared advantage, shared benefits. Whereas another could be it's a community driven, but it's not owned by community. It's a more privately owned, but collaboratively one. I think the one which is more successful is the second one. More collaboration, not just community control and manage and everything. Because when it comes to managing, tourism businesses, community managed could be complicated, because that's where things get complicated, because there's a less innovation if you need all communities to get together to decide even a small thing, who to hire, who to fire, how much to charge, how to do your business, how to do marketing, and all sorts of things, right? So I think the best approach is more collaboration. You collaborate with private, public, community, enterprises, and then manage from there. I don't think there's a one that's the best, but I think you can always find out different elements of community-based planning, and sometimes you need to look at the cultures and legislation and the laws you have based on the community, based on the country you have. So I don't think there's a one best example that you can just copy and paste.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Good.
I would also agree with the adaptive co-management approach there as well, because you're engaged with different stakeholders, and the community is also an important part of that as well. When it's when just the community is in charge, they're trying to command all these different areas that go into, and the marketing, advertising side of things can be a challenge, and that's where the adaptive co-management approach there also lends more voices, but you're also still telling that local story, and the storytelling is still an important part of that as well. So you're not losing that strong community bond to the product.
Thank you for that. There's one question in the chat. Are there good examples in the Western United States? We did see one from Navajo and the collaboration, but any other recommendations or good examples?
I think working with the Navajo Nation, I saw one example of Canyon Dice National Monument. Canyon Dice National Monument is federal monument. And then this monument is co-managed by the National Park Service and the Navajo Nation Parks and Recreation Department. I think this is one of the examples where different agencies can get together. I think the past experience is past experience is single agency, single entity managing the community, or the managing tourism, managing parks. But now it's more collaboration, more co-adaptive management, where different agencies work together, because different agencies have different expertise, different different experience, and different access, so that works better than just managing by one agency.
All right, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would just also say the same. If you look just east of Phoenix and Scottsdale here, we have Tonto National Forest and some tribal groups also adjacent to that area there. So there's the balance in terms of the ecological protection, then also the cultural aspects of tourism that get blended together quite well.
One other question came in. What are the main benefits and risks for tribes when engaging in CBT projects?
I think the benefit is, when you have community-based tourism, definitely benefits the community, versus, other side of non-community-based tourism is the mass tourism we have seen, right? We have seen in many places where outside investors come and they build the infrastructure, they build hotels and resorts and whatnot, and then once their goal is to just reap the profit, right? Reap the benefit without considering local communities' values and cultures and needs and priorities. So community-based management is definitely the approach that is beneficial to the community and their cultures and their values, so that you have control over your tourism. A lot of times, tourism seems very exciting in the beginning because it brings jobs, it brings money, but over time, if you don't have control, then a lot of these people who actually they have to be displaced from the community because they can't afford to live there, they can't afford to be in that community anymore. So I think we've seen a lot of these examples where people welcome tourism without looking at the consequences. These consequences, if you don't have a good plan, if you don't have this community control, tourism is, you have seen a lot of over tourism protests in Europe and even in the US, right? People, have seen too many tourists. They're just facing a lot of challenges, including Sedona. We work in Sedona, and people were, not happy with, local residents were not happy with tourists at all because the traffic, they didn't have, when there is emergency, there's no way they can get through the traffic, if there is a fire or something. So they were really upset with current tourism status in Sedona and many places. And community-based approach is just the opposite. You get community inputs since the beginning, so that you have control over what you are planning to do, what you are trying to do. The disadvantage could be the investment. I think the process could be slow, right? Because always it takes longer if you try to involve community in decision-making process. Whereas if a single person is in charge of everything, they can make quick decision. But if community is in charge of these things, it takes longer to implement, longer to plan. So probably that's one of the disadvantages, I would say.
And with that as well, one of the key terms there was over tourism, because with community-based approaches, you want people to stop and have that localized experience as well. So that storytelling is also an important part of the tourism narrative. If you have too many people passing through an area, they're just there to have a quick stop and see, and then that can have an impact on cultural and ecological protection within areas. And then when people are just passing through an area, it doesn't have that longevity and sustainable impact to the local community.
Well, thank you both. And just in our last couple of minutes, I want to thank you both again. Dr. Neopani, Dr. Wise, thank you for being with us here today. And do want to draw our attendees attention back to IANTA's resources and opportunities. Please check out the resources on ianta.org. Our staff and partners like ASU work collaboratively to support Indigenous tourism across the U.S., and we want to make this available to you. Also on our website is additional training opportunities, again, including that certificate program with ASU. I hope several of our attendees today will consider taking advantage of that. For more information regarding that program, there are upcoming webinars as well as past webinars and resources. Visit our website and also consider signing up for our weekly newsletter, the Rupert Report, to keep up with all things Indigenous tourism. Thank you again for our speakers today and for those in attendance, and we will follow up with resources after this webinar. Thank you so much for attending.